Welcome back to another episode of BrightLearn, where we dive deep into the most intriguing stories from the world of science and technology. Today, we're taking a closer look at a book that has stirred up quite a storm in the climate science community: The Hockey Stick Illusion, Climategate, and the Corruption of Science by A.W. Montford. This book is part scientific history, part detective story, and it uncovers the dramatic saga behind one of the most iconic graphs in the global warming debate, the so-called hockey stick graph. Now, if you're not familiar with the hockey stick, let me give you a quick rundown. This graph, first published in 1998 by a scientist named Michael Mann, purported to show that the Earth's temperatures had been relatively stable for centuries, only to shoot up dramatically in the 20th century. It was a powerful visual that seemed to confirm the worst fears about human-induced climate change. But as Montford reveals in his book, the story behind this graph is far more complex and controversial than it first appears. The book begins by introducing us to the key players in this scientific drama. On one side, we have Michael Mann and his colleagues, who became known as the Hockey Team. On the other side, we have Steve McIntyre, a retired mining consultant with a knack for statistics, and his collaborator, Ross McKittrick, an economist. McIntyre's journey into the world of climate science began in 2002 when he stumbled upon the hockey stick graph and was immediately skeptical of its claims. Montford takes us through the painstaking process McIntyre undertook to scrutinize Mann's work. He started by requesting the raw data and computer code used to create the graph. But what he found was a tangled web of obfuscation and resistance. Mann and his team were less than forthcoming with the data, and when McIntyre finally got his hands on it, he discovered a series of troubling issues. One of the most significant revelations was the way Mann had used a statistical technique called principal components analysis. McIntyre found that Mann had employed a novel and unconventional method of centering the data, which had the effect of amplifying any 20th century warming signal. This short centering technique, as it became known, was not disclosed in Mann's original paper, and it raised serious questions about the validity of the hockey stick. But the problems didn't stop there. McIntyre also uncovered a host of data issues, including the selective use of tree ring data, the exclusion of certain series that didn't fit the desired narrative, and the reliance on a small number of bristlecone pine trees that were known to be influenced by factors other than temperature, such as carbon dioxide fertilization. As Montford recounts, McIntyre's findings were initially met with resistance and hostility from the climate science establishment. His attempts to publish his criticisms were met with delays and rejections, and he faced accusations of being a shill for the oil industry. But McIntyre persevered, and his work eventually gained traction, thanks in part to the support of influential figures like physicist Richard Muller and Dutch science journalist Marcel Kroc. The book also delves into the political fallout from the hockey stick controversy. As Montford explains, the graph was heavily promoted by the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, or IPCC, and became a key piece of evidence in the push for the Kyoto Protocol. When McIntyre's criticisms began to gain attention, they threatened to undermine the scientific consensus on climate change and the political momentum behind policy action. One of the most fascinating aspects of the book is the insight it provides into the inner workings of the climate science community. Montford reveals a culture of groupthink and resistance to criticism, where dissenting voices are often marginalized or ignored. He also highlights the role of influential figures like Mann, who wielded significant power within the IPCC and used it to promote their own work and discredit critics. The book culminates with the release of the Wegman report in 2006, which was commissioned by the U.S. House Committee on Energy and Commerce. The report, authored by a team of statisticians, largely vindicated McIntyre's criticisms, concluding that Mann's methodology was flawed and that the hockey stick graph was not a reliable representation of past temperatures. But as Montford points out, the story doesn't end there. The controversy surrounding the hockey stick continues to this day, with ongoing debates about the validity of temperature reconstructions and the reliability of climate models. The book serves as a cautionary tale about the dangers of scientific hubris and the importance of transparency and open debate in the pursuit of scientific truth. In conclusion, The Hockey Stick Illusion is a gripping account of one of the most contentious episodes in the history of climate science. It's a story of scientific intrigue, political maneuvering, and the struggle for truth in the face of powerful institutional forces. Whether you're a climate science enthusiast or just someone who appreciates a good detective story, this book is sure to captivate and enlighten. Thank you for tuning in to BrightLearn. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe and leave us a review. And if you have any questions or comments, feel free to reach out. Until next time, keep learning and stay curious.
Visit brightlearn.ai for more fascinating videos like this one, and naturalnews.com for full editorial coverage and breaking news on critical stories that keep you informed and aware of what's really going on.